Hello, I'm Michael Gaucher, and it is October 9th, 2023, and it is 5:05 p.m. And I want to talk about a few things: carnivore versus vegan. And I also want to talk about diets, and I just want to express some thoughts on this. So I have some notes because I don't want to ramble on, and I want to stay on track. Carnivore versus vegan. I was asked about that, not exactly carnivore versus vegan. I was asked, why did I become a vegetarian? Why did I decide not to eat meat? This is some good tea right here, basically. This is a combination of, what's that? Lion's mane, MCT oil, gotu kolu, green tea, Egyptian licorice root, and a little bit of senna leaf. There's one more. Oh, and chai. Tazo chai. So I took a Tazo chai tea bag. I took a Yogi Egyptian licorice tea bag. I took, I forgot what the brand is called. I think it's called Brain Focus tea bag. And I took King something. It'll be in another video about teas and liquids. But I put all those teas together and I brewed them. I allowed them to steep individually because I use a timer to make sure they're all steeped the right way at the right time intervals. And this is absolutely wonderful. So that's how I make tea. I rarely do a single tea. I've been brewing tea like this for years. And so, because I find that you get bored with just a single hot cup of green tea. You get bored with a single hot cup of Earl Grey and even a single hot cup of chai tea, even though the tea bag, it has a combination of cardamom in some cases, cardamom, cinnamon, black tea, star anise. It just depends on the formulation of chai tea that we're talking about. So anyway, I like to mix teas together, and it keeps it much more interesting and less boring. This is water with electrolyte in it. You can learn about that in the previous videos. But now it's starting to get a little cooler. Man, it was like 82, 84 degrees not an hour ago, and now it's cooled down. And that's why I'm sitting right here as opposed to anywhere else, because I actually wanted to sit somewhere else. I wanted to go to the park and have this discussion. I wanted to do all kinds of things. But my timing was such that the sun was just at such an angle, and the spread and the temperature was just such a way where I knew that would not work in terms of being able to have this discussion. So, carnivore versus vegan. Here's what I have to say about that. And this is actually not going to be a long discussion. This is going to be rather efficient and quick. I spent over 20 years in software development and IT and technology, and I have a bias towards efficiency. I've unlearned that to an extent, but I switch to efficiency when it's necessary. So in this case, that's what I'm going to do in this discussion. I just wanted to break the ice a little bit because I may hurt some feelings, and that's not my intent. But what I want to say is this. The most most nutritious food that Homo sapien can consume, that a human can consume objectively. Take your feelings out of it, take the emotion out of it. Objectively, according to current science, let the scientists debate. When I say scientists, I'm talking about doctors, people who went to medical school, got their master's and doctorate in a specific medical discipline. I'm talking about those individuals that went through that process, and they may not have went into private practice or practice in a hospital, though many did, but they've studied. They spent more of their occupation in labs, studying the more chemical, biological side of medicine. I'm talking about chemists, and those chemists and those with a strong chemistry background that work at the intersection of nutrition, biology, and other factors impacting human physiology. I'm referring to those individuals. People who have worked for the United States Federal Drug and Food Administration, USDA, and so on and so forth. Clinical scientists, you name it. I'm referring to that group in general. And not all individuals in this group will agree with what I'm saying. But what I'm about to say comports with research that individuals from that population of researchers have uncovered. And it is this. The most beneficial single food item for a human being in the species Homo sapien is red meat. It is red meat. Okay? So, when we're talking about all the core nutrients, right? The core ones that you can survive off of. A human being can survive at a maximum level, all else excluded, on just cooked red meat, but also raw. You can eat it raw, eat it whatever. I would say medium well would be probably ideal. And I'm only saying that because you cook meat too much, you can introduce carcinogen. And that's the issue with meat, is meat, and I'm being objective here. I haven't slid into my own views yet. And this is based off of research that I've looked at. I've looked at it hard. I've looked at the politics behind it. I've looked at the culture behind it. I even looked at the religion behind the concept surrounding meat versus vegetarianism versus vegan. And sliced and diced it. And if anybody asks me on it, I can give you the references. But the problem with meat in the United States is that, number one, the way, and when I say meat, I'm not talking about all meat, right? I'm not talking about fish, because I do exclude fish, right? There's problems with fish. I'm just talking about red meat from cows, buffalo. Who am I missing? Let's just say cows and buffalo. Let's just start with there. So cows and buffalo. Cows and buffalo, that's going to be the best meat you can get. But the problem in the United States is that cows and buffalo, in many cases, for the supply chain, when people are getting meat, is not raised right anymore. The way the mammal, right? So I'm talking about mammal-based meat. Mammal-based meat. because cows and buffalo are a form of mammalians, right? Okay, so mammal-based meat, its food source has a huge impact on the actual nutritional benefit you're going to derive. But even excluding that, right, even if you don't feed the cows and the buffalo the right way, you're still going to get more nutritional value than you will with anything else. The problem is that you're going to get other problems if the cows and the buffalo are not fed right. They have to graze the right type of grass. They have to graze grass, period, and not just be stuck on grains, right? Even if they're fortified grains. It takes you back to GMO versus non-GMO. The cows and the buffalo need to consume proper grasses cultivated on proper soil in order for the human being that consumes that product to get the maximum benefit from that. The second problem, and this is actually more of this is more a problem than the first one. In the United States, I'm speaking, with meat, is that the oil that's used to cook the meat is a problem. Processed oil on meat, it doesn't destroy the nutritional value, it simply adds anti-nutritional value. Okay? So, that's where you end up with these other problems. You don't end up with the problems from the meat itself. You got the problems when you're consuming the meat based on how the meat's done. There are a lot of people that are vegans and vegetarians today that would not be had the meat been prepared right in the fast food restaurants, the meat continued to taste right, and the meat was observably healthy and nutritious. I'm trying to watch my words carefully. You didn't get a gut from eating the meat so much, and it didn't cause these other issues, right? If you could observe that, right, in your own dietary lifestyle, the motivation for many people to move off of actual meat from mammalian sources would be non-existent. That's just the truth. That may offend some. That may make some people want to turn away. That's fine. Like I said, this is not a monetized channel. None of this is ever monetized. This is me looking at myself in the year 2050 or the year 2070 and saying, what did the young version of Michael actually know and understand at that time? And this is a piece of knowledge that I don't want to slip my grips. I want it right, because I actually archive all of my videos that I publish, right? I keep them in perpetuity. So anyway, and this is faster than writing a blog post. So meat is the number one healthy element for a Homo sapien. Objectively, scientifically. Now, I'm done with that. I said my piece on that. I've emphasized the science in terms of what I've understood. And there's that, right? The truth is, meat is superior to vegetables in general. Now, I don't think animal rights is the right point of view for choosing a vegetarian course of action. I used to. That was one of my criteria. But as I've evolved spiritually and consciously, I see so many contradictions in our lives, and I see you can't be for war, for example, and the the destruction of other human beings, but then be for the preservation of animals, right? You just can't. You can't say that you're for animals, but you wear leather. I mean, you can stretch that. You can say, well, the animal moved on naturally and we just reclaimed their skin. I can get that, but in general, you can't be for that. I even include faux leather, fake leather, because it's the symbol of an animal's exit, right? But there are just so many contradictions that when you add them up, you'd have to be part of a religious order that is so careful that you don't even step on a bug. And I'm not part of a religious order. I don't ascribe to religion, but in general, I don't kill bugs. Right? I capture them in Ziploc bags, and if they're in my dwelling, and I release them somewhere else. Right? And I release them back outside. So I take great strides to do that. And so I respect the life of other beings, right? But animal rights should, in my opinion, should not trump human rights. There is no equality between a human and another animal. There just isn't. So if I had to choose between one of my young nieces and nephews in a critical situation and an animal, even a pet, my niece and nephews come first. My cousins come first. My relatives come first. So if you work that out logically, and I'm stretching the definition of logic, intuitively, you can't be 100% consistent on that. So I strike that from the table in my own existence, in my own path. So why do I choose? And you saw I didn't refer to notes. That whole dialogue I just did, that's just a segue. So why did I choose? I'm actually on track. So why did I choose vegetarianism and then veganism? And the distinction between vegetarian and vegan is that vegans don't do dairy, right? So this has gone on just a little longer than I anticipated, but I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. So paleo versus Mediterranean versus keto versus fruitarian. I don't believe in any of that stuff. They got great aspects to them that you can learn from, but I think that vegan really is the better way to go for my journey. And I don't say for others because I don't make prescriptions for other people. In my spiritual evolution, it's about how am I transforming my inner self, not how I'm transforming someone else, right? Everybody's path is their path. What can I do with me? How do I take responsibility for my life, right? I don't dictate what others do. I like looking at these plants, the way they move is like, is that a cat? Whatever. Anyway, so, all right, let me speed up a little bit though. So my personal philosophy is that I want to simplify my engagement with nutrition on planet Earth. And I do so in a very simple way. If it comes out of the ground, right? If it comes out of the ground, then in all likelihood, I'm going to eat it, right? If it naturally grows out of the ground, what comes out of the ground and what's in the ground, in my view, has the most benefit, right? And I say that on a number of levels, right? Now, if meat grew out of the ground, all bets would be off, right? But meat doesn't grow out of the ground. Meat is based off of things that are in the ground that gets transformed through another being that you then consume, and you consume their byproduct of that transformational process. So K2 in the ground through grass gets transformed into B12, and that's where you get B12 through meat. but you can have a person live their entire life without B12 and they'll be just fine, depending on who they are, right? And for me, I know my own body, and I can go my entire life without B12, and I'm going to be just fine. But there are other ways to get B12, and I'm very careful about that, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Meat doesn't come out of the ground, eggs don't come out of the ground, fish don't come out of the ground, though that can, depending on the species of fish in the deeper recesses of the ocean, blah, blah, blah. Watch out. Sheldon Cooper moment there. Algae, I'm on the fence about algae. Right now, I don't want to consume anything that is algae-based, right? But if I accidentally consume something that's algae-based, I'm not going to be upset about it, but I'm still on the fence about algae in terms of its classification as animal or plant. But mushrooms definitely come out of the ground. I previously didn't want anything to do with fungi, but now that I've researched fungi and I've tapped into other people's description of fungi and the mycelium network, I'm fully informed on that now, and mushrooms are one of my top staples. And so I say go full bore ahead with mushrooms. But you got my philosophy. I want it out of the ground, naturally occurring, straight up like that, from the grass, from the soil, from the tree. That's it. Flowers, that sort of thing, right? And then to me, that simplifies things, because in an overall, and I like to simplify things. I do a what if scenario, like, okay, what if society imploded, blah, blah, blah. You got those that would do hunter-gatherer, they would go and get meat, they would go hunt and that sort of thing. But I see a lot more trees and a lot more grass and a lot more sources of vegetable nutrition than I do populations of animals. And it seems to me that you will exert a lot more effort as a human being trying to pursue that rare gazelle or giraffe, or in the Americas, that buffalo or that cow or bull, right? Some of that may be perilous, right? So what's the cost-benefit ratio in terms of your mortality versus the acquisition of that meat, right? Elephants, or in the Americas called the mammoths way back in the day. You can just gather nuts, berries, herbs, and vegetables, and if you know what you're doing, you can get a combination of nutritional elements that would be a lot more sustainable. And that's where agriculture came in, and that's how civilization was able to explode, blossom, because we now had an organized means of nutrition that we could apply at scale. Well, it started with the ground. So anyway, that's how I look at it, is like when push comes to shove, I got the trees, I got the grass, and if I know how, like the Native Americans, because I do have Native American ancestry as well as Puerto Rican ancestry as well as African ancestry, and as far as the ancestors was concerned, identifying leaves and branches and those sorts of things, and be able to know what you're looking at, which I don't have that skill set. I never really developed it, but my brother, he did develop that skill set. He knows how to do all of that. My younger brother, who's a martial artist, blah, 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 he knows how to go out in the woods, live out in the woods for weeks at a time, and just subsist off of that. But it's in my core lineage and epigenetics, right? And so, anyway, I'm going to transition topics here. Cooking versus raw vegan. Cooking versus raw vegan. I was inspired by this gentleman by the name of Eris Latham. And for the past year, I had endeavored to try to transition to raw vegan. But after doing the most up-to-date scientific research, after going through that and looking at it, I want all my options on the table when it comes to my own diet. And so you can't say that cooking is 100% negative, or a negative impact, has a negative impact on vegetables. It's true that when you cook certain leaves and certain green vegetables and other vegetables at a certain temperature, roughly on average above 80 to 90 degrees, you will destroy certain enzymes that are beneficial. What we have found is that if you can do Chinese style stir fry cooking at 5 minutes or less, and even if you don't have a wok, and I spent actually about 5 years of my life doing wok cooking, and I've cooked for going on 15 years as an adult, right? I started cooking roughly around 2008, 2009. Off and on, and then there was stretches of years where I would cook, and my favorite method of cooking was wok cooking, and I would do it in layers and all this kind of stuff. I think gas stoves are superior to electric stove tops, but I wouldn't let the use of a flat stove top deter you from doing wok cooking, especially after what I'm about to tell you. But if you can keep the temperature at a certain level and keep the duration of the cooking below 6 minutes and use a high smoke point oil like coconut oil, right? Because I don't do dairy, so I wouldn't touch ghee butter, but ghee butter has a high smoke point as well. But my only oil that I want to use is coconut oil. If you use coconut oil and you use it with, let's say, a wok or a nice deep level skillet, right? You want one that's kind of deep so it can hold all of your ingredients. Heat up the skillet, put the oil in there, right? And then what you want to do is you want to do it in layers. You want to put your root vegetables, hard vegetables first, like onions, garlic, ginger, beets, if that's part of the meal. You know, if you're going to cook, right? You put those hard vegetables that can handle that initial plunge into that high heat, because that's a tatka. It's from India. Tatka cooking method where you seal in flavors, and you can also sear spices that way, right? Like cardamom spice. I've watched like dozens of cooking videos. While I'm fasting and I'm not eating, I'm actually able to use my time to just research things. And so I've been researching cooking and sprouting and microgreens and food prep so that I can get all geared up for when I exit the fast, what I'm actually going to do, and just be able to slide right into it and not hit this wall where I backslide into some food habits that I want to escape from. So anyway, but my approach if I cook is I'm going to heat a skillet. It's going to be hot. It's going to have that coconut oil. I'm going to put the hard vegetables in first. That's going to absorb the majority of the heat. Then I put in the medium firm vegetables. And then if I put leaves in there, put the leaves in there, stir that up. Actually, you turn off the heat. You pick up the skillet. You just start stirring for 5 minutes. Have a timer going. And you stir it up. And it doesn't have to be cooked all the way through. It just has to be warmed. Have the oil distributed, the spices distributed, put a little bit of salt. And as someone with 15 years of experience of cooking, similar to this way, but actually in the past overdoing it and using vegetable oils, I can tell you it's going to taste good. But I'm going to do it that way when I do cook, right? And then my other form of food prep that I'm going to do is I'm going to do sprouts and microgreens as my main thing that I'm going to do, right? Sprouts, microgreens, MCT oil as my dressing of choice with spices and a little bit of Himalayan pink salt or even maybe black salt on occasion. I am not doing any grains. That means no rice, no bread, right? I don't want no tortillas, no burritos, no basmati rice, no naan, no pizza, no grains whatsoever. So for me, 0 grains at all. So if I do go to a restaurant and the dish happens to come with the grains, I'm going to let the little rice just sit there and the waiter can pick it up, dispose of it, whatever. If I'm eating with someone, they can have my share of rice or bread or whatever. If the only thing that's on the menu is it comes like this, let's say a burrito, I can dump the vegetables out, put the burrito off to the side. But I'm actually not going to those type of restaurants that just serves primarily carbohydrate style meals that are in wraps and that sort of thing. That's going to be primarily off of my menu choice, right? But if I can customize what is served to me, I absolutely will. But my main thrust is going to be to grow my own food and eat that most of the day, most of the week, right? Growing those sprouts is so easy to do. There are hundreds of videos that show you how to grow your own sprouts, and then you can actually turn a sprout into a microgreen, so you can get a double whammy, right? And so it's like after 3 days you got a sprout, and then from day 1 to day 7 you got a microgreen, and you can let the microgreen go on a little bit, but it actually hits its peak nutritional value for most microgreens at around day 7 or 8. So I'm going to combine these, and you want a variety of different sprouts, not just lentil sprouts and not just chickpea sprouts, but you want all kinds of different, you can sprout just about anything. You can sprout chia seeds, sesame seeds, you name it. And when you get that variety, and I was tapped into that by Yogendra Hassandri of the Yoga Institute, who clued me in on that. Thank you, lady. That was very good information, by the way. And then you can use these sprouts and these microgreens in a number of recipes. Some good cooking channels that I recommend is Wortman Cooking. Absolute, that's my favorite cooking channel. Happy Baelish, and then Rainbow Plant Life. Yep, those are the 3 that I remember right now, and so those are 3 that I would remark on. They have some very good ways of cooking that are very straightforward and simple, and I modified their instructions where they say use this oil, I use coconut oil. When they say cook for this long, I say, nah, I'm not doing that, but I can get some inspiration on, how I can mix different things together. That brings me to the wrap up here, in that some of the vegetables that I'm taking off of my plate, things like bell peppers, even cucumbers and that sort of thing, I eat those together and separately, right? If it's botanically a fruit where it has seeds in it, I don't mix those with what's called botanically vegetables, which are those vegetables that don't have seeds in them. I don't want to mix the two, because you get much more impact when you keep the two divided, right? And so you can create dishes where it's botanically fruit, and you can even blend that with what you would call classical fruits. If it has seeds, it's a fruit, so eat those together. But don't mix those with things that are true vegetables. So I keep those separate. And then my main points on all of this is self-sustaining nutrition through sprouts and microgreens, because you can get these mason jars with sprout lids, and there are great videos on that, and you can just grow your own stuff. Higher nutrition. It's simpler and easier to remember. Easier food prep. You don't have to think about it as much. You just put some sprouts together, put some microgreens together, a little oil, some spices, a little salt, shake it up in a resealable bag, eat it with some chickpeas. You can even get canned chickpeas if you want, canned lentils from Walmart, Kroger, or wherever, and you're good to go. If you got a blender, you can make your own hummus. You can also make tofu alternatives using lentils and chickpeas, and all it takes is 10 minutes. You basically grind it up in a blender, then you heat it up in a pan, you stir it, you pour it into a glass or a plastic container, put it in a refrigerator for 2 hours, take it out, chop it up into cubes, put it in a salad, bam, you got texture. Absolutely awesome stuff. Life-changing. I will be doing that. And so I just got to figure out the logistics on that. But that's what I wanted to wrap up. And finally, I think this direction that I'm going to go in is going to be more cost-effective, cost less money, reduce the dependence on eating out quite as much, and make my nutritional level go higher and streamline and simplify the way I eat. So I hope you found this well, informative, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know.